today our class has asked two paleontologists that have just come back from Africa to come and talk about our lineages. So today our group is showcasing the research we have done on the evolution.
Just keep going.
So today, So we will take you through the synapomorphies in our evolutionary tree that have accumulated over time and have made Homo sapiens the intriguing organisms they are today. As you can see, we began walking on all fours, but eventually we became to start walking and even running for relatively long distances bipedally. We began to make and use our own tools. Our brain and skulls grew and developed, as well as an advance in our intellect. As the video finishes, I would like to assure all of you that these animals we have deemed apes are much like ourselves. Through time, our lineages have separated, but we hope that you all can gain a better appreciation for the evolutionary process Homo sapiens have undergone. Okay, so the first species I would like to talk about is Australopithecus afarensis, which is nicknamed Lucy's species. It lived from 3.85 to 2.95 million years ago and roamed the earth for 900,000 years, which is 4 times the amount as our species has roamed the earth today. And they also have the oldest documented bipedal footprints. Some fossil evidence of this can be seen in Haile Selassie's article about the new foot fossil found in Ethiopia. Sorry. This is the map of where they were actually found, and these are pictures of the fossils found. And it was said that the Australopithecus afarensis foot had a transverse arc more developed than an ape's, which allowed them to walk for relatively short distances on 2 legs. But it was not just the foot that changed, the legs also shifted inwards a little bit, but the bone size did not shape. However, over time we'll see the legs shift inward more, the upper leg bone lengthen and strengthen to allow the weight to be held on 2 feet and allowing to walk bipedally for larger distances. However, when the feet and legs changed, the arms did not. They stayed long and strong to allow them to still swing and choose if they felt that they needed to. We see more fossil evidence in Leakey's article about the jaw, teeth, and nasal cavity structures found in Kenya. They were found to have small canine teeth, much like early modern humans, but they said that they typically ate roots, fruits, nuts, seeds, which are like softer things, but when need be, they could eat harder foods, like during the winter months when they weren't readily available. Though diets are a large contributor to the size, the males had an average height of 4 feet 11 inches with a weight of 92 pounds, when the females had an average height of 3 feet 5 inches with an average weight of 64 pounds. The obvious side difference leads us to believe that they had different jobs in society. And we also found that they developed much more rapidly than early modern humans, which minimized the social development period, and in turn only led them to have brain cases 1/3 the size of early modern humans. And speaking of skulls, one of our specialists, Tim, is going to now talk about the skull evolution.
The skull has changed very much over the past couple of years. Between 2,000 and 206 million years ago, that's when it started. The species Allotropius was the original species that the scientists started doing skull practices for. And what they've noticed is that the brain cavities over the years from Homo sapiens to, primates, apes to Homo sapiens has gotten smaller while the jaw has gotten larger while the jaws have gotten smaller. But Humans have the largest brain cavity of the apes from like then to now, and also with species such as Arthropithecus having the largest jaws. But the size of skulls varied from individual to individual depending on the diet and the environment the species lived in. What scientists theorize is that the size of the skull increased as the species encountered new challenges over these time periods. They basically, over these time periods, said that thought that the more the species had to deal with over time, the bigger the brain cavity needed to be for a larger brain on processing and what could process more from like each species. Another study scientists looked at was the change in the brain during drastic climate changes over time, with the biggest climate change being 800,000 years ago. And the climate changed more. As the climate changed more, the skull size changed, with the biggest change being 200 to 600,000 years ago. As far as the jaw size goes, it depended upon the diet and also the different environments. So over time, the jaw is shrinking because of the use of tools and also things like that, because canines started to get smaller as the tools were used, because the canines weren't used anymore to cut into flesh or different things that it was used for, and the development of tools had a big part to do with that. Scientists have found evidence that suggests that over the past 50,000 years, the importance of large teeth, such as canines, have been reduced. Relying on like the flesh and things like that, like I said, with the development of tools needed for strong carnivorous jaws, which practically eliminated, causing the teeth size and gradually get smaller as the species evolves. And here's a video of the different skulls over time from apes to humans. This video shows all of the different species on our map right here, but we chose 5, and that's the ones that are displayed on the board that I'm Now we're going to have my colleague talk to you about tool development.
Alright. Thank you, Tim, for that great introduction of skull structure and bone development. I did my study in the Olduvai Gorge, which is located. This is just a brief. This is a simple picture that I took with my camera, and I don't know why it's not coming up, but it's located in Tanzania. So if you had a picture of Africa, it's in the bottom right. And the reason I went there was because in 1960 there was much controversy over a study done discovering a new hominid that was over 2 million years old, and they named it Homo habilis. And the reason there was so much controversy is because there was previous thought that only humans were able to use tools. Only humans were able to develop these complex machines, such as cars at the time, or even boats. And when these hominids were found, they found that there was striking resemblance between our hands and their size and our size. And not only that, they also found stone tools around these fossils. Now, I went specifically looking for these fossils and see how could they tell that these stones were actually tools. And what I found was very intriguing in that if an average person just walked past this rock pit, you would just think it's nothing. But looking back in time, there was a riverbed at one point, and this riverbed was very unlikely for rocks to just be at the bottom of this riverbed. The only way they could get there would be by transportation. So looking at this specific riverbed or one-time riverbed and using geographical, thermal analysis of the sedimentary rock, I was able to date the rocks to 2 million years ago and see that these rocks were found or were developed at the same time as these fossils were found. Now, upon further speculation of these rocks, we saw that they were actually sharpened. How could these smooth rocks that are found in nature be sharpened? Now, upon replication with my research team, we found that we could take a rock and break it apart and sharpen it. Now this train of thought has to go somewhere else. It has to say, why would these hominids develop these tools in the first place? Now, that can be found based on their environment. In the environment, they're in a grassland with a lot of lions, hyenas, so on and so forth. However, typical apes, they live in trees. They look for fruits, bananas, as you typically see in movies and stuff. And these hominids, it's hypothesized that they began to compete try to consume these large animals. However, they're not as agile as lions. They're not able to outrun these lions. So how can they compete with them? The hypothesis is that they sharpen these tools so that when they saw a large carcass as a giraffe or some large animal, they were able to go have a sharpened tool, cut through the flesh, get the bone marrow, which is very nutritious at the time, or even today, and take the bone marrow and also take some of the fats and lipids that you can't find in nuts and berries. And they also found evidence of stone, and I also found evidence of bones that were actually broken apart with stones. And this is very important because even Tim has discussed our jaws at the time were larger, but they weren't able to break through bone. The only way they could break through it would be with a rock. So when I came back to the States, I had a lot of information and I wanted to look into more research of it. And the last study that I looked into was actually written by Carol P. von Schreck et al. And the study talked about the various mechanisms that tools could arise by. One way is by social tolerance. If you can picture elementary school class and one kid finds a way to get the cookies to the top of the cookie jar, the first thing the kid's going to do is tell the rest of the class how they're going to get up to the cookie jar. However, in most animals, communities, and populations, this is not true. If an animal finds a source of food, they're usually just going to be selfish and go right to the food and not share it. Apes, however, they've found in nature have actually worked together and gone foraging as a social class, or like just together. And we found with hominids that's actually more common than apes in that they'll develop something and share it and communicate and transmit these ideas between each other. And over time, these ideas have passed along and advanced to the point where we are today. And the second part of it that I looked at was dexterity with the hands. Homo habilis originally had very long middle fingers. However, over time, these fingers shrunk and our thumbs grew. This is very important because when we came down to land, as we talked about earlier, we had to start using our hands for picking up, use precision gripping to make these tools. We didn't actually need claws anymore to climb on trees, and with these better fit hands, we were able to develop more complex tools. I will show you a video real quick where capuchin monkeys have actually been seen using their own form of tools, which is an example of convergent evolution. And this is just one example of how a fellow ape can use tools. And this simple task of just throwing a rock onto a nut, because you can't really see it with the quality of my computer being terrible, but you can see that the nuts are on these anvils or these solid rocks, and the monkeys are able to recognize that they can use other rocks to break open these nuts. This task, however, is not very common in nature. Even just throwing stones onto a nut is not very common. And as of right now, there are 6 species of apes in the world that can actually perform tools perform tasks that actually require tools to do something other than just throwing them or breaking off a stick or just finding a log on the road or something like that. So, thank you for listening to my talk, and I will give it to Renee. She's going to talk about the development of intelligence from apes to humans.
Okay, guys, so how do we define intelligence? There is no universally accepted definition of intelligence or a specific way to measure intelligence, but some ways people do is by measuring the speed and success of animals on how they problem solve and how they survive in their natural and social environments. These problems might relate to spatial orientation, feeding, interspecific communication, and social relationships. These behaviors are a response to the specific environment that they live in. Like Chris was talking about tools, these tools developed they had to develop in order for them to survive in their environment. Recently, most psychologists and ecologists have agreed that intelligence can be measured by one's mental and behavioral flexibility. And what that means is for one to be able to respond to a range of situations, not just situations that they are used to. So for example, if an ape saw a boat sitting in the middle of a river, they would not understand how to operate the boat. However, humans would have the flexibility in order to figure out that the boat is a mode of transportation and would allow them to collect more food and better survive. So now I'm going to focus more on social cognition rather than just physical. So if my body language suggested that I was in a bad mood, would a human or an ape be more likely to show sympathy? You guys, does anyone want to answer? Humans? Okay, well, yes, most likely humans would be more inclined to react because humans possess what's called cortical neurons. It's also known as mirror neurons, and they're located in the prefrontal cortex, and what they are responsible for is allowing us to understand the mental states of others, and what they do is send signals to one's brain so we can recognize how another human is feeling, leading to the feeling of empathy for others. And humans possess more cortical neurons than any other animal, which is why I guess we're known as the most intelligent. So an experiment that was conducted to support these social cognitive skills and physical cognitive skills, there were 3 groups. The first group consisted of 106 chimps. The second consisted of 32 orangutans, and the third was 105 human children. Each participant completed a task there were 6 scales. 3 of them were social cognitive skills, and the other 3 were physical cognitive skills. And the test was called PCTB, which stands for Primate Cognition Test Battery. And the skills that they were asked to do were, for example, using simple tools or following gaze direction or doing a gesture to the experimenter. And results showed that researchers found that the physical cognitive skills involving things like space, quantities, or casualty, there wasn't a huge statistical difference between the apes and orangutans and the humans. However, the social domain, the social cognitive skills, humans did significantly better than the orangutans and chimps. And results showed that humans were correct on 74% of trials, whereas chimps and orangutans were correct on half as often. So from this study, we can conclude that the major difference was that humans possess what's called specialized social cognitive skills I was talking about, which can explain why we can be sensitive to others' feelings and show empathy, and these social cognitive skills eventually led to communication. By conclusion, this supports that intelligence and the use of these social cognitive skills in monkeys have evolved over thousands of years, or thousands of generations, and that these skills that have evolved explains why we can communicate with each other and learn from each other, and why I can stand up here and teach about intelligence while you guys can understand